So I wanted to do a video to go over the reasons why it's so hard to let go of someone, even when logically you can see the facts. The facts being that this person left, this person has not treated you the way that you know that you want to be treated and that you deserve. This person has maybe even been toxic or nasty, yet there's some part of you that's thinking, why do I still want them? Why am I still so sad about this? Why am I still thinking about them? And why won't this feeling go away that's keeping me so attached to them? So in this video, we're going to talk about all the possible reasons why this is still happening. And by the end of it, hopefully that will make sense, which really can help you to move forward when you understand why. I always find that knowledge is power when we're learning about ourselves. And when we do understand really the psychology of what's actually happening, then we can go, oh, right, I see. I'm not crazy. This is just a normal reaction to something very difficult. Okay, so hopefully you'll feel very human by the end of this. So before I get into this video, I'd just like to remind you that I have a 30% discount on my coaching and my courses as a massive thank you for helping me get to 10k, which is actually 11k now, which is mad. So thank you very much. If you put into the box at the end, the code 10k thank you, it'll discount any coaching and courses to 30% off. So I'd love to meet you, talk to you, help you through whatever it is that you're going through. And if you want any more information about that, you can send me an email. So, right, why is it so hard? One of the reasons why it's hard is because of our attachment history and what's drawn us to this person in the first place. But one of the things that can happen is a kind of trauma bond cycle, which is where you're in a situation with someone and then they do something that feels like a rejection. And then so it starts there, the rejection. And then you go into this panic, trying to get love, trying to fix it, trying to resolve it, trying to be the one that makes it better, and trying to find a way through. And then it works for a little bit. Maybe you kind of brush your feelings a bit to the side, but actually what you get is a little bit more of connection, and it can feel better. You just feel better. And in that moment, your dopamine in your brain goes right up because you've got all of that reconnection hormones, happiness hormones, and you're like, oh, I don't need to worry, everything's fine, we've got each other. And then another rejection happens and you're back to the start, and then your cortisol goes up and you're stressed again. So you panic and you try to do something to fix it again. So it's like rejection, trying to fix it, reconnection, rejection, trying to fix it, reconnection. And in that, you've got a spike of cortisol and then you've got a spike of dopamine. And this is addictive. This is an addictive cycle. It's a trauma bond cycle, right? So you might even be in a connection with someone who you think is addicted to a substance, and you're there addicted to this hormone cycle, right? So I'm telling you this from my research and understanding, not because I am a therapist, right? Just to make this clear, this is my own research that I have looked through books and articles, and I've understood myself through my own therapy and my own journey myself. So I'm just sharing with you the knowledge that I've learned along the way. But when I learned this, I was like, oh my God, oh wow. I have been absolutely doing that. I've been addicted to this cycle, and especially the part of like, I've got to fix it, I've got to fix it, I've got to do something. And that led me to like the manifesting community where I'm like, oh yes, I can fix it. I can manifest this person to love me. And, I can find out how to get them back, and it can be me. I'm the one doing it. And this, again, the reason why it's hard to break is because the blind spot here is an underlying belief that I've got to work hard for love, and love is not easy for me to come by, and I've got to do something to prove that I'm worthy of getting it. So I've got to try really hard because that's been my pattern all my life. And if I don't do it, then I won't be loved and everybody will leave me and it'll be awful. So if that belief is running the show in the background, it's really, really hard to break, but you can break it, and you can break it by realizing that you might have it right now. This is the start, okay? So if you've got that belief, start now affirming to yourself, not obsessively, not some kind of like, oh, write it out 1,000 times a day, but start having the conversation with yourself that actually love doesn't have to be so hard. And that you don't have to try so hard to be loved, and that you're good enough exactly as you are, and you don't need to do anything to prove it, okay? Because trying to get love and people pleasing and fixing isn't love, it's manipulation anyway. And that isn't the kind of love that's ever going to be healthy. So you might be in the cycle of there's a rejection, then there's the need to fix it, and then there's the reconnection, which feels amazing, and then there's a rejection again. And this can go on for years. This can go on for years. So this is one of the reasons why it's very difficult. And then the other reason why it can be really hard is because you've invested so much. It's the way I described it when I was going through this was like, I felt like I was training for the Olympics and then it got cancelled. And I was like, well, what do I do? What do I do with all of this energy, hope, determination? Where do I put it? And that can feel really, really, really difficult. And the way that what's helped me is rechanneling that determination into something else, something creative, something that really lifts me up, rechanneling it into myself. Because, like I say, again, love shouldn't be that hard. So we don't need to, relationships are inherently hard, but they don't have to be so hard that you're the one lugging someone up a hill, right? It's got to be two people. Relationships take two. That's your new mantra. Relationships take two. So where you've been trying so hard to get someone to be where you are, that is not a dynamic that is ever going to feel smooth or easy. And even healthy relationships struggle. So that's another thing that really clicked for me, is that relationships are hard even when they're healthy. But when they're unhealthy and there's this toxic cycle and, nasty kind of coping mechanisms of nasty words and aggression or any kind of toxic behaviour, or shutting down and stonewalling and all that kind of stuff, like that's really hard to work through that unless the other person is very willing to take accountability for their side of the street. And all you can do is work on your side of the street. That's the thing. So while you're in separation and while you're not with this person, you get to work on your side of the street. And I know that you were trying to do that with this person, but now you get to really see your part in it, which is a really important part of the process, because there are two sides to every story. But you've got to focus on what you can control, which is only you. If you're driving in a car, you can't control the other cars on the road. You can only control your wheel. So, right, the other reason why it can be really difficult, and this one was like, wow, this was an absolute brainwave for me, was that when you're with someone and it's like, it's good, then it's bad, then it's good, then it's bad. It's almost like our brain just shuts down the bad stuff because we go into a freeze state, right? Our nervous system goes into freeze. We go into shutdown when we feel threatened. So it's almost like we kind of numb out to the stuff that's not great. And this is a really dangerous place to be because it can get a lot worse and we can start feeling like, yeah, I know, they said that was not great, was it? No, it was terrible. And your friends are going, why can't you see how awful this is? And you're like, yeah, I know, but also they're this and they're that, because it's almost like your brain stores these parts of this person in two separate places. Like the good stuff is stored there in this kind of limerence fantasy like area of the person that you hope and want them to be, and then the bad stuff is stored somewhere else. And one of the best things that you can do to heal is realize that this person who was this good stuff and this bad stuff was the same person, right? How does that feel to acknowledge that? Because I felt, when I realized this, I was like, oh yeah, objectively now I can see this for what it is. This person was all of these hopes and dreams, but also all of this horrible toxic behavior that made me feel awful. And this person wasn't right for me, and this person was my everything. But together, I can see it objectively and say, that doesn't work. Even if they are all of these things that I love, they are also these things, and I need to be with someone who is more of a united thing that works, rather than so much troubling behaviour. For me, when I realised this, it was almost like the trauma bond could end immediately, because it was like, oh wow, they're the same person. Because when you're in a situation where you don't know what you're going to get, especially with an avoidant where you're like, you don't know if they're going to be open and loving and they're going to be there for you, or if they're going to be shut down and distance themselves. It can be like, well, who am I? And you start to feel crazy because you have to adapt all the time to like who they're being. And then when you're out of that situation, you're like, well, what do I do with this kind of other self that I have created? And it can feel really confusing, and that can create cognitive dissonance, which your brain wants to fix. So therefore you end up going back and into the same cycle to try and just feel whole again. Yeah. So you've got to get to a place where you realize that this person and this person was the same person, and that you have to learn that your natural coping mechanism for being in this situation, which was chaotic and confusing for you, has led you to be in a state of cognitive dissonance, basically, which is where it can just feel really unsettling and confusing. And you're like, now what? What do I do now? Who am I now? Because a lot of the time in these situations, we have to abandon ourselves to meet this person's needs. And when we do that, we start to really lose connection with ourselves. So your number one job now is to reconnect back to yourself. Because when you reconnect back to yourself, you are going to have so much more clarity, because at the moment it might not feel clear at all. Everything feels overwhelming and confusing. But when you step back and you're able to have clarity, which takes time is honestly one of the best healers. Time, conversation, being in healthy relationships where you feel seen, where you feel heard, where you feel understood and cared for. Yeah, seek those out, because they're so important in this process of healing. When you start to heal and your nervous system starts to go, I'm safe, and the stress and the cortisol comes right down, and you're not trying to fix it but trying to fix the relationship, you actually start to feel more whole and complete, and you can see the situation so clearly for what it is, and then you have a choice. Until now, you haven't had a choice because you've been in this kind of addictive cycle. And also the other thing, of course, is that there's a kind of limerence and a real hope of what this person was. And while you're at a distance from someone, when someone's being at a distance, you've still got an element of hope that when you are close, that all of those troubling behaviours will not be there if they just open up. And so when this person is keeping themselves away from you, there's always a sense of hope and fantasy and longing and trying to get, which fills the void of the space that they're creating in the middle. And if you see what you're doing there, you're filling the space that they're creating with ideas, with hope, with love, with positivity, but they're not. And you have to be with someone who is. Right? Do you get it? You have to be in a situation where the other person is also filling that space with the same amount of passion and energy that you are. Because otherwise it's you and your ideas rather than you and the reality of the situation. And the manifesting community are going to think, well, everything starts in the mind. Yes, everything starts in the mind. And you are the creator of your reality. But part of this is that you have allowed something into your reality that doesn't resonate with the person that you authentically are. And that is part of the manifestation process, is actually releasing these inauthentic ways of being and releasing the fear that keeps you doing those inauthentic ways of being. Do you see what I mean? So manifestation is such a huge part of this, but not in the kind of, let's start in the mind and imagine this away and gaslight myself so that I don't have to acknowledge how disappointing this is. How, actually, if you sit for a minute and you think for a second, I'm really disappointed. What I feel is I'm actually just very disappointed. That can feel really nice. I know that sounds really strange, but just to acknowledge that, yeah, I'm disappointed. I'm really disappointed is a validation of that feeling that you might be trying to avoid by running to try and fix it. Again, chasing is avoidance, as I said in my last video. So the other reason why it's very difficult to move on is because sitting with the disappointment and the grief and the loss and the hope of what you had created in your mind and not being met with in this reality because there was something in you that needed to be released, right? Because there was a fear that wanted to be seen and loved and acknowledged, and there was an opportunity for you to love yourself, right? And that's not because it's all you, it's all on you. This other person was co-creating with you, right? But the fact is that this is very sad and painful when this happens, when you have to let go of the way you hoped it would be in this situation. And I'm not saying that things can't change, because obviously I say that all the time, things can change, people do change. But in order for things to change, it's like we have to get over the mountain, which is accepting where we are now. Once you get over the mountain, yeah, which is the hard bit of this sucks, this is disappointing, this isn't what I wanted, and you actually go into acceptance of those feelings, a whole new horizon opens up and new possibilities can exist, which is where you can go, now what can I create? Standing here, from being able to see that I have been disappointed, and I acknowledge that I have allowed things that I shouldn't have allowed. I can acknowledge that this person hasn't shown up for me the way that I wanted them to. Standing here from this acceptance, you're free to create a whole new world of possibility. And that's where we can start creating the love that we do want, which is very exciting. So there's probably loads more that I can say about this, but I like to keep my videos like bite-sized so that they are easy to follow and understand. So I hope you found this video useful. If you'd like any more information about what I do, how you can work with me, there's lots of information on my website. Use the discount code 10K thank you for 30% off until the 31st, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.